Let's go to Fatima Ayub in Lahore, in Pakistan. She's a journalist and a lawyer, but a strategic security analyst with the speciality of Pakistan and Afghanistan. Fatima, welcome to the show.
Thank you, George. Thank you for having me.
How do you analyze the removal of a popular prime minister in that way? What do you think is the reason for the removal of Imran Khan?
Well, you know, when you think about Pakistan's political history, since 1947, since Pakistan came into being, about 29 prime ministers have come into play, and none of them have yet been able to complete their 5-year term. I think that says a lot about the political context in which Pakistan has been rooted in. As far as the Imran Khan regime goes, I don't think that anyone, even as far back as a month prior to his removal, could have ever expected something like this to take place. And that is because you could see Imran Khan, he visited the Beijing Olympics. He, on the very day that Russia announced the invasion of Ukraine, it was Imran Khan who was in the office with Putin, meeting him to essentially bargain for reduced oil prices. And things were going quite well in terms of foreign policy when it came to Pakistan. Khan was also a populist leader. Although reports have claimed that Imran Khan was aware of this no-confidence motion being orchestrated by the opposition since July of last year, I don't think he even gave anyone a hint of what was to come. So it was quite a shock to the Pakistani population when this did take place in March.
How do you assess this change?
Shahbaz Sharif, and actually the PMLN has historically enjoyed a very good relationship with India. And when I say that, I also mean personal relationship with Modi. I mean, he was there at many of Sharif's wedding festivities in Lahore. As far as the oath-taking ceremony of Shahbaz Sharif was concerned, India was actually one of the first countries to congratulate Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif on regaining a seat, as Pakistan's premier. And I think that goes a long way to show us how Pakistan-India relations will perhaps move for the better, at least in terms of optics. But we can't really say for sure unless we have more things to base this assumption on. When it comes to the US, I mean, it is quite evident when you look at the cable that was communicated to the former Prime Minister Imran Khan via the via the Pakistani ambassador to the US, Amjad Majid Khan, that the US stated that Pakistan would be in hot waters if Prime Minister Imran Khan was not ousted. So now that he has been ousted with the no confidence motion, there is a tacit assumption that obviously better relations with the US will resume under Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif's tutelage. And that also ties up with the fact that Pakistan will now be going back to the IMF, given that economic collapse is quite sadly imminent in Pakistan. And obviously, as times have always shown us, as history has always shown, you need the US on your side when you need to go to the IMF for more money. Shahbaz Sharif is most likely to be visiting the US and be visiting the IMF headquarters in the next coming months. Pakistan-China relations will just continue as they have previously, because I don't think they've ever been based very intelligently so on the change of any political seats, really. So it should be pretty much a resumption of status quo in that arena. But I believe US and India is where we'll see the most amount of changes.
Because of these economic problems, do you see Pakistan tilting further in the direction of Riyadh, of Saudi Arabia?
So under Imran Khan, Pakistan moved towards having quite an equitable, mutual relationship with both Saudi Arabia, with Iran, with the US, with China. Now that Pakistan finds itself in hot waters yet again, since 2018, it is quite very much expected that Shahbaz Sharif will have to look towards Saudi Arabia and towards the Middle East, the UAE historically as well, for increased aid and especially to help bail us out of the IMF loans that Pakistan is quite heavily situated in. So yes, that is very much a possibility.
Given what you've said, do you think the chance of a general election is over for now? Or are you expecting this mass mobilization to prevail with elections soon?
Yeah, so George, given the huge popularity and the huge turnouts of crowds for Prime Minister Imran Khan as he's held these protests all over Pakistan, given that and his consistent pressure on the current government of Shehbaz Sharif to bring the elections about, we're expecting that there should be a move swiftly towards general elections this very year. The Pakistan Election Commission has also announced that they'd be able to hold elections in October 2022.
If there is no general election soon, then what happens next? Are we expecting these protests perhaps to turn violent?
George, one of the more unfortunate things that have been happening in Pakistan is the mass media blackout under the current Shehbaz Sharif regime, and the mass blackout of the coverage of Prime Minister Imran Khan's various protests across Pakistan. There have been mass, very popular crowds have been gathering, like hundreds and thousands of people have been gathering, even in fringe cities like Jhelum and Attock. As well as other cities like Islamabad, Karachi, and Lahore, where Prime Minister Imran Khan has held jalsas or protests of hundreds and thousands of people. It's a fair thing to observe and to say that people are definitely in favor of a general election to be held as soon as possible. I think part of that is also fueled by the fact that Pakistan is facing an extreme economic crisis. This was obviously also observed as part of Prime Minister Imran Khan's own government in the last year or so, where he had felt the need to go to the IMF. There was mass inflation. The Pakistani rupee has been faring really badly against the dollar. It is at its lowest that it has ever been against the dollar, which is rupees 193. And generally, there's been an increase in utility prices all over the country. So people are really, really feeling the heat of this political upheaval in Pakistan. And there are massive calls for the elections to be held as soon as possible. Yes.